Welcome back for another episode of Unsecurity. I'm back with Brad as usual. You get both of us this week, but we don't have a guest this time. We decided to give our guests a break, and sometimes timing just doesn't work out. So we're looking
It's like
forward to a conversation, just the two of us.
I was gonna say it's like people have jobs to do or something.
They're busy. Yeah. So Brad, what you been up to? What hobbies you got going on right now?
Yeah, I'm almost done with my Millennium Falcon. I've got completed 98 of 100.
Wow,
You
you
know,
were really close to done then.
I'm really close. It's a little bit weird. I'm kind of like slowing it down a little. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do when it's done?
Got to stretch it out. So do you
Yeah,
have all of the
it's
last
been a
packages?
year. What's
Yeah, do you
that?
have all the last packages now, or you're still waiting
Yep.
for?
No, I've got here's package 98. This is what the packages look like. Comes
Oh
in the,
yeah,
all of those got to be glued on.
yeah.
So
That's exciting. Well, I look forward to seeing the whole thing completed, and you've done a little bit of painting, but then you might
a
have.
little bit, yeah. It's going to require buying a bunch of stuff. And I just was like, I don't know if I really like, I don't want to buy a bunch of airbrushing stuff if I'm not going to use it again. It doesn't seem like it's worth it. And
Yeah.
so, and this segue. So for the
Well,
listeners
yeah.
that
Of all the good timing, I have a new microphone and a new camera for those that will notice. And along with that, you can now hear the guinea pigs that live in the office with me better than ever. So I thought I would introduce them. So I've got them in a box for easy access right now. And there they go. So this is Frankie, our fluffy guinea pig. I'm introducing them out of order. We got her last because one of our guinea pigs we thought was going to die and then didn't. She's actually the most person friendly guinea pig, even though initially when we first got her, her anxiety told her to bite us occasionally, but now she doesn't anymore. So it's great.
well, that's a good step forward.
Yeah, so now she's everybody's favorite, and it's kind of funny since she's the last one we got. This is, I forget your name, Apple. Hold her up a little higher.
Yeah.
She's the one we thought was going to kick the can early because she's kind of got like, they're probably benign little cancer tumors all over her belly. Like you don't see them, but you can just feel them when you pick her up. She just kind of gets lumpier and lumpier, and that says you can't do anything about it because they're too small to operate on. It would put her into shock, but she's hanging in here like two,
Hey,
3 years later when we thought she
wow.
would be gone. And my last one, Spike, who's also a girl, but her name is Spike.
Nothing wrong.
We got Spike and Apple from one of my coworkers from a previous job when they decided to get guinea pigs over the pandemic, not realizing how long they live. So, as a
One.
short public service announcement, guinea pigs live anywhere from like 5 to 9 years. So, you're making a long term commitment. And
Same
they're
as like
perfect
a
size.
dog, at
Yeah,
least,
they
So,
probably weigh about the same as a really small chihuahua or something. So, if you ever hear great screaming and tweetings, and I might mute myself, it's them. They live over there. They are, what's the word? Hierarchical, and so they have to fight and compete for stuff sometimes. And if they both get in the same space, they will make a racket.
that's funny.
So, with that, I'll quickly put them back. But you want to introduce what we're talking
Yeah.
about today?
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about policies, why it's important, why we're talking about it this time of year. Do you go with policies first or technology first? And just having a conversation around kind of the governance side of things. Yeah, I think that covers it.
Yeah, that's a lot of ground to cover. We'll see if we hit all of the topics or not. But I think one of the reasons we like talking about policy, unlike maybe some of our customers, is because we understand the benefits of them. And I think just as being consultants anyway, we understand the value of kind of setting the rules and setting consistency and things up. I know when I get on the topic of policies and documentation, I think back to working with one of my clients that was a law firm, and they didn't have policies, but they had a really strong information security program. They're fairly small, so they didn't need to exercise this across multiple offices and firms, which is definitely another benefit to having documentation. It was two guys, the legal say so and the IT manager, and a very small team. But even for them, like really emphasized it's important because they were both getting ready to retire.
Oh my
This
goodness.
is the episode of Pets. I'll keep talking. Um, but yeah, they were both getting ready to retire. They were roughly the same age. And so after conducting a really well done incident response tabletop, I just kind of looked at them and I was like, guys, this is the time to talk about documentation. You haven't wanted to do it, you've wanted to avoid it, but you're both getting ready to retire. And how are you going to protect the strong program that you've built, spent years building, if you don't have processes and standards documented for the people that come after you to follow? They're going to have to figure it out. They're going to redesign the entire thing if they don't know what you've already put in place. So there's so many reasons, but one of them is just continuation of your information security program, providing stability over time.
Yeah. Consistency, right? And
Yeah.
I always like to explain it like policies are the kind of like think of it as uh, Dungeons and Dragons, right? Everybody kind of knows the general rules that's acceptable use,
Yeah.
but who knows all of the really big details? Well, the person leading the program or leading that. So that when you're looking at the policies, it's really that's kind of the intention is, hey, these are the rules of the game
Mm-hmm.
that we need to follow, and that way that you're setting those clear expectations that if people know like what their roles and responsibilities are, what they should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's your game reference
Yeah,
material, right? Like you're not dealing with these specific scenarios every day or looking at that specific technology, that specific implementation every day. So you need to have something to go back and reference to. Well, how are we supposed to be doing? What's the standard that we've established? What's the expectation we've established for our program that kind of, and that's why it's so important to have executives involved in that policy creation or at least approval process, because the idea is this is their stamp of approval on the way things should go, so that instead of going and asking that executive every time, and by the way, you might get a different answer if you're doing that from time to time, it's documented, it's stamped approved, and then you review it periodically to make sure it's still in line with the organization's goals and objectives.
yeah, and periodically is typically annually, or if there's a significant change within the organization. But you know, when we look at that change, I would say it. A lot of people we try to keep the policies high level. It'll have a role listed as opposed to an individual, so that if a CFO leaves, there's not you're not having to revise your policies.
Yeah.
It's this list that the CFO has these responsibilities.
Yeah, yeah, that roles and responsibilities is really important. And I know that's a lesson I remember hearing from Evan Franson, like early on when it started. It's like anytime if you have something that needs to get done, something that's important, you have to assign an individual, not even a group, not
Right.
an unproclaimed group of people, which often happens, is like somebody's going to do this, right? You have to name an individual, even if it's a group that's accomplishing the task together, one person that takes individual responsibility for making sure that the meetings happen, that the item stays on the agenda, that progress is made. Because otherwise, if it's a group, they all have different priorities, and sometimes those things can get lost.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to if you're in an emergency and say someone call 911, everybody assumes somebody else is doing it. That's why you point to somebody and say, you, we called it, right?
Yeah,
It's the same concept. People, that it's just human nature is to go, oh yeah, somebody will take care of it. And then nothing happens.
right. Yeah. Or you even end up with multiple people taking care of it, and then maybe they don't leave the building because they're still trying to find each other and who checked in with Susan to make sure she got out or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you either have too many people doing it in different ways and clashing with each other or unaware, or nobody does and it doesn't get done. Well, maybe I'll just ask why should people think about reviewing their policies this time of year, do you think, Brad?
I think it works a lot well because, well, you want to do it typically during a slower time period, right? A lot of companies run their fiscal year based on the calendar year. So this is kind of middle of the year, good time. You get typically have everybody back from vacation, so you're not having to wait on people. The other thing we see is a lot is they run it kind of that July through June. Well, we're past that, and we're past the start of that fiscal year. So it just works out from everyone's back from vacation. There's no holidays right now. Typically a little bit slower time frame before we get into the holiday season and end of year. So it seems to work for a lot of people.
Awesome. Yeah, and of course that schedule is going to be different for different organizations. Like this probably isn't the right time for K through 12
Right.
or
Or
higher ed.
higher. Yeah.
Yeah, where they're like just starting there and have all the commotion. But yeah, I think for a lot of organizations, this is a pretty good time to start that review. I know I've worked with in Oregon, this is kind of when it landed, just naturally in the flow of things. Others that might be amping up production of manufacturing, either that's already resolved itself, or this might be the key busy time of year. Like, don't work on your policies when things are on fire and all the
Right.
other demands are coming at you. However, if there is no lull, then you may have to find time, but try to
Yeah.
target that typically quieter time of year when you can actually get time on people's calendars to have conversations too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it goes back to what we say. Like, there is no one size fits all for this for security, but I think the timing isn't as important as the logic behind it. Is
Mm-hmm.
finding when you have that time that you're typically a little slower, that people are in the office, and it's something that really should be done. It is important.
Yeah. What is usually gained by doing that periodic or annual review?
Well, I mean, so security never slows down, right? Technology isn't slowing down. So making sure that the policies still reflect the organizational, their environment. Have there been acquisitions that you didn't take into account for before? Is there new, AI? That's obviously a huge thing. Do you have anything in your policies on what is the acceptable use of AI? So yeah, it's really important to just make sure it's still relevant and easy to understand.
Yeah, and it's a good opportunity to even like I said, it's not necessarily something, or it's definitely not something you're looking at every day, unless I guess you're at an organization where you're the person having to look everything up for everybody else. But it's your opportunity to refresh your memory on what has been documented. There might be some rules that you've forgotten about, and maybe you have made a change through the year previously, and you're like, oh crap, I forgot that this is a written policy. Ask yourself, did we apply the policy effectively? Do we need to make adjustments back into it? And also, like, compliance with your policies is always a work in progress, right? Like on the templates we provide, I know there's kind of a few statuses, like from draft to approved to adopted or implemented. But even when it's implemented, it's always a work in progress. It doesn't just stay implemented all the time, like you were saying, right? Like changes happen. You have to take the time to think about it and review and say, have we consistently applied this rule, this statement across all aspects of our organization where it applies?
Yeah, yeah, and I think going off of that, I think I'd like to go to what comes first, the policy or the technology, because we can talk ideal state, we could talk if we were starting from scratch, but the reality is in most places the technology is already there without policy. That's just what we see.
Yeah,
But I think personally, if I were starting something from scratch, I would start policy
yeah,
and then build the technology to comply with that. But again, unfortunately, that's not the reality for most places. What about you?
yeah. I agree. Yeah, ideal state with like, you don't have to worry about funding. You don't have to worry about timing. That would be awesome to start with policy because it does allow you to set the framework of expectations. It's interesting because I think either way there's pros and cons, because if you write the policy ideal state but then you bring in the technology, you might find that it doesn't match all of the objectives, and so you're probably going to have to modify that policy a little bit, at least as you go, to meet realistic expectations depending on what it is you're rolling out. If you had a really concrete idea, maybe if you designed your network map with an expert, so you're not missing lots of things, and then designed your policy and then brought in the technology, that might be the best way. But yeah, I think what we see working with our clients a lot is it depends on where you are in your organization. If you are just starting your information security journey, you probably want to start with fixing the things that are wrong in your security controls, your technology controls first, because the policy isn't going to stop you from being breached, but turning on your firewall and cleaning up those rules can. So it'd probably be nice if you can do a little bit side by side and make progress, but otherwise it's kind of like put out the fires, give it some thought, then document your policies so that you can consistently apply those security controls as you expand that. Because otherwise, if you just go and patch things willy-nilly all over the place, you're going to end up with a mess of inconsistencies that you have to go back and correct too.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something that's really important, is IT shouldn't be the only ones working on the policy. That they should be fixing the technology, and then the policies should be worked on in conjunction with IT, but
Yeah.
with representative business unit sample. So you want to have those people in that group that represent all the aspects of the business, because it's going to impact them. So you should be able to, to work on those side by side.
You don't think IT should just be like, my job will be easier if the passwords change every day, are 20 characters long, the screen locks after 15
Super
seconds of
secure,
inactivity.
super secure. But yes,
Yeah, you got to take all those exceptions and how the business actually operates into context. And I think we think of that a lot when it comes to data management, especially. Like IT usually knows where the data lives and kind of how it connects to other systems so people can access it, but they don't know the value of the data, how often the data is accessed, all the places you need to access it from, the level of sensitivity, who should have access to it. And that's where a lot of those roles and responsibilities, but also policies and procedures come into place, because you don't want IT making those decisions. You want
well,
business leaders
yeah,
making
we
decisions.
see that all too often, and then it causes conflict, and then you're IT and security, and you've caused conflict. You're eroding that trust with the business and that relationship, and it was not something that typically it's not like, well, I'm going to do this to show them. It's I'm doing what I think is best, and nobody is telling me otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, or, you might have your help desk that's, even if it's three people, so even if it's not very large, that's three individuals that know three different sets of information in different ways. And so if they come across the same scenario and you don't have a documented process for how do I process this request that I received, whether it's for access granted or whatever, they might each approach that scenario in three different ways. One might go to a manager, another might just ask the person making the request, another might just copy an example set from the past. So again, you can end up with different ways that those permissions are granted and inconsistencies. So that's again the benefit of, that's process documentation, but that's there to back up the policies. I think that's another thing we didn't touch in, but we come across in our work regularly, is the difference between policy and procedure too, right?
Yeah. Policy really should be that high level. Here is what we want to accomplish. I think encryption is probably the easiest one to explain it with, is to say, the data must be protected by encryption. Acceptable encryption is listed in the encryption standard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's basically what it says. I mean, there's other stuff to it, but that's, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, that's really what it says.
Yeah. Kind of one or two simple statements about we're going to encrypt our data, or this is the data we're going to encrypt.
Right. But it doesn't say how, right?
Yeah.
But that procedure and that standard, the standard is going to list out what are the acceptable encryption algorithms,
Hmm.
and then the procedure is going to lay out how you are actually implementing it.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that designation and division between policy and procedure and standards is so important is, as we said earlier, your policies are approved. Those are the orders from your executive management team. Those are the ones they understand high level. They put that stamp there, but they don't need to approve the procedures and the standards. That's the nitty gritty detail that the IT managers, the team leads can set and define for the teams. When you update, like, hey, the new encryption standard is available. We've learned that this other one has been promoted as legacy. It's no longer secure enough for our environment. You don't have to take that up to your executive management team to say, hey, can we change the standard? You just update it with your
Right.
manager, with the appropriate person on that team, the knowledgeable person. And so that way you don't have to send these all the way up to the top every time a standard
Right.
requirement is changed too.
Right. And the other thing is, anytime there's a policy change, it should be, sent to the entire organization.
Hmm.
And you're going to get, the glazed eyes
Yeah.
if you had to do that. Because, like we said, technology changes. And so, yeah, you may have, here's the acceptable hardware list. Well,
Hmm.
that's going to change at least annually,
Right.
because the processors are changing, the models are changing. If you had to send that out every time, people are going to get, information fatigue and just ignore your communication. So what they need to know is they should pick from the approved configurations and know who to ask for that information.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call. I think one of the other challenges we hear sometimes is even just leadership not wanting to have policies documented. I know we get pushback from legal, for example, fairly often with if it's written down, they have to do it, some sort of sense of obligation, wanting to avoid it. How do you usually approach that?
I mean, we're at a point where, you know, proverbial ostrich head in the sand, I know is not a defensible position anymore.
Hmm.
One of the things that, well, a couple of examples. One, I was working with a lawyer who only wanted 30 days of email. After that, it was deleted, gone,
Yeah.
because then it's not e-discovery. And I was like, okay, so let's say we do that and something comes up from 6 months. The person that is suing already has that communication, and you're going in blind with no background, no internal communications that could, yeah, obviously, yes, it could hurt, but it also could help. You're
Hmm.
going to go in blind with just their evidence. And so they're like, okay. But the policy, it kind of is this, it dictates some of that stuff and says, these are the roles and responsibilities. I can't say I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do this if it's in policy and I've signed off on, I understand that I must comply with the policy. I've received it and I'll be compliant. Well, if you don't have that, you're going to have a lot harder time with enforcing, if you wanted to fire someone for, whatever reason.
Negligent use of the
No,
technology
we,
or.
I mean, I had an incident where we found a user was surfing adult websites and how to manufacture like 3D gun products and that were illegal,
Hmm.
and they couldn't do anything because they didn't have an acceptable use policy. The HR and legal said, we'd love to, but there's nothing we can do because we didn't tell them they couldn't do this.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
going back to what you said earlier, like having a lack of policy only demonstrates that you aren't intentional about
right?
your information security program. Because, like you said, it's not acceptable to say, "Oh, we didn't know the rules of the game." It's like, no, it is out there. It is publicly known that every organization needs to take responsibility for protecting their information and their organization, and they have responsibilities legal, even if you're talking like the American Bar Association says that lawyers need to be knowledgeable enough and to take appropriate precautions to protect the information of their clients. And so just claiming they didn't know enough about information security isn't enough. And so when you put those policies together, again, it's always going to be a state of progress. You're not going to be in 100% compliance across 100% of your organization. But by putting those policies, by writing them, and by approving them, you're demonstrating that you are intentional about the design of your information security program, that you are making efforts to set those standards, set those rules, communicate those rules across your organization, just like you said, so that you can hold people accountable, so that you can have a target that you're going towards as you build your organization towards that standard. And then if you're missing it in some place, something happens, you get breached or whatever, and you can say, well, that was a control we didn't have in place. As long as, you haven't intentionally said, yeah, we know about that, but we don't want to do anything about it. We have the capabilities, we have the manpower, but we just don't want to be bothered. As long as you're not demonstrating that, you're making effort toward those goals.
And you can,
With or without policy, you're going to be found in negligence in that scenario. The policy isn't going to be what's like, well, you had a rule that said you were, so why aren't you?
right. Well, and to that point, that's one of the big pushbacks is, well, we aren't doing that yet. So we don't want to put it in policy. Well, guess what? You're never going to get to doing it because there's nothing that says you have to be doing it.
Right.
So, the way that I give that advice is we have a waiver process for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You can waiver that for, let's just say, DLP, data loss prevention. Well, we're working on getting it figured out with Purview, but it's not there. It's going to take another 6 months before we're really sure about it. Okay, well then put in a waiver that says we understand we are not compliant, but however the process or project is in place with an expectation. Man, I can't talk today. Expectation that it will be completed by this date.
Yeah.
That's a defensible position. That's a much. I would, if it were me, I'd rather be defending that than saying, well, we didn't put the policy in place because we weren't there yet.
Right. And then it's just kind of your word against nothing, because there's nothing documented to say you were actually working on
But
it,
right,
and
exactly.
acknowledge that it was an issue. And likewise, even if you decide, um, I don't can't think of an example off the top of my head, but you like putting in cameras or something at all of your entrances and exits as an example. Even if you decide that's an acceptable risk for us, the cost is too high, we perceive that the risk is fairly low, documenting that, like even if your policy, I mean, you could have a corporation wide policy, but at one of your facilities, it doesn't make financial sense to put cameras in, then you document an exception or a waiver that says at this facility, we understand there's a risk, but we've assessed it to be low. We are not going to be putting in cameras. Like, again, acceptable, and now it's documented. And one of the other benefits is, as with our review topic, you can come and look at your list of exceptions on an annual or periodic basis and say, hey, has the purpose and use of this facility changed from year to
Right.
year? Is there now sensitive information there, or more people coming and going out of this facility now, or the surrounding area has changed so that risk has changed? That would determine that the risk is now higher than low, and so we should, and it is now worth the business interest, worth the cost of implementing those. It gives you that opportunity to review and make a educated risk decision. So again, it also helps raise things up, I think, to that executive level, bring those things to their attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Because ultimately they're responsible, so they should probably
Whether
be
they know
aware.
about it or not, right?
Yeah. Right. And so they should probably. You're going to be in a much better position if they know about it. You do not want to surprise executives with bad news.
Yeah, it was amazing how long we can talk about this. Should we wrap up with, if you are an IT manager, acknowledging that you should, that policy would be good, but having trouble defending that to your executives because you have to get them their support if you're actually going to get those executive signed policies. How do you think you would approach that?
I think I would. It comes to building the relationship with the executives, right? Understand, who do you report to? Who else can you go to? So let's say you report to a CIO.
Hmm.
Well, they're probably gonna get it, but maybe they're having issues as well. So maybe you break it out and say, hey, look, we know policies shouldn't be part of only IT. Let's find another executive to work with to be the champion.
Yeah.
Go build a relationship, work with the CFO, work with your chief legal officer. So those are probably the ones that are going to get policy the best just
Mm.
because of the nature of their jobs. So
Yeah.
find somebody beyond just IT to be that sponsor of the program. Now maybe they're not the ones directly involved, but if you get a CFO that says, hey, we're putting together a policy committee, it's going to be every business unit. Well, it's a lot easier to now justify that time than if the CIO is doing it and everybody's like, well, it's just IT.
Yeah. What if you're at a smaller organization and say the executive management, maybe you're reporting directly to the president or something that has no interest in this whatsoever? Would you support an IT manager kind of just starting to document even their own processes
Yeah.
to say, like, I'm starting to set these standards, maybe even just run them by the president and say, hey, here's what I'm putting into place, like, or would you rather just be
No,
like, well, all right,
no, I would say if it's a standard or a procedure, right, the IT manager or whoever would own that.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, absolutely start documenting what you would own anyway.
Yeah,
If nothing else, to protect yourself. And then as you can build those out and you can then show them and say, hey, look, this is what we're building out. We'd really like to get this type of consistency across the organization. Here's how we can do it. If we have the policies that tell us what we should be doing, now everybody will be doing it the same way. We're not juggling 15 different balls trying to make everything work.
yeah. Well, and I imagine then if that bad thing does happen, a really bad day in IT or security, and then said president or other executive comes to you and say, how did you let this slip through your fingers? At least then you've got a documented process of saying, hey, here's the things that we're working on. Here's the things that we're defending. You can pretty immediately point to what your process is rather than saying, oh, well, I'm sorry, it just slipped through the cracks. You can say, well, actually, we are very intentional in this. However, risks always happen. These are always changing. Yeah, I think you're going to be more defensible to your manager as well. And so less likely to have to go find a new job
Yeah,
afterwards.
yes, yes. No resume generating events. Thank you very much.
Right, right. Well, awesome. Yeah, this looks like we've already gone on for more than 30 minutes, so we should probably wrap it up. It's been great chatting and geeking out about policy with you, Brad.
I know. Probably one of the few people we can geek out and have so much fun about policy. So,
Uh,
what
um,
about shout outs? You got a shout out?
um, I haven't thought about it. I don't know. I guess in my mind, it's kind of just our whole team. I've had an opportunity to meet individually with more members of our team in the last couple of weeks, and it's been such a breath of fresh air. We've got so many passionate people that are passionate about information security and all their little niches, right? Their areas of specialty. I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about being a manager and being at this level is you get to see how everyone operates a little bit differently and their brains just click in different ways. You've got one person who's really technical and talks in technical terms and interprets things in technical terms and looks at them from one way. You've got others that are innovators and at the forefront, but they don't necessarily know how to put process together. And then you've got other people that don't want to be on the forefront, but they love digging into policy and process and just putting the puzzle pieces together. And others that just love working with the things other people have established and having the conversations. So it's so cool. It's something I think I never would have said that or would have thought I expected from the role that I really appreciate. So just appreciate everyone on the team and their different perspectives and special things that they bring.
Awesome. Well, I'll give a shout out to you because you covered me on Monday. I hurt my back on Sunday and was supposed to do our annual training and awareness, and I couldn't sit in the chair. It was so painful. So literally minutes notice, you took the training and had to deal with my bad jokes in the Kahoot answers, and
I love those.
without knowing what was coming your way. So I appreciate you covering for me.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I'm glad it worked. It was rather entertaining since I hadn't looked at the slides. Didn't know how long they were. Didn't know when the questions popped up. It was like, let's just go.
Yeah. So thank you very
I think
much.
it
I
worked really
appreciate
well.
it.
So my pleasure.
There were a couple of very specific answers that were for specific people, and they did actually reach out and say, well done. I
Oh,
appreciated that. So,
that's awesome. Cool. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. I know we're working on a couple guests. I don't recall. We've got a couple of our internal team members coming over the next couple podcasts. I think we've got Jim on next, if I recall correctly, to come talk about cloud. And
yeah,
then Seth after that.
network vulnerability management, and then
Yeah, yeah.
got hacks and hops coming up.
Hmm.
There's some fun surprises in the works as well.
Yes, yes, we absolutely do. As always, check out our website. There's a contact form on the FRSecure or Unsecurity page, and you can also email us at unsecurity at frsecure.com if you want to provide us with any feedback, comments, suggestions, or want to be a guest in the future. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.